Hi there, welcome back to my fabulous disclosure channel. Michael Feeley is back for a second interview. Hello, Michael. How are you, mate?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks again.
We got a wonderful response to our broadcast from last week. We covered many different subjects, the paintings and drawings behind you, past life events, historical events. We were deciding that we would introduce you as a mind seeker, a seeker of the ancients. What you brought last time was an introduction or invitation for other people to consider things they've already been taught, because we are taught and then we repeat what we're taught, but look at the kind of multi-dimensional layers. You definitely opened up quite a few questions, which we're going to get to. But please do say hello to the lovely audience, mate.
Hello again. Thank you for all your lovely comments. I did enjoy reading them. I did note the several questions that we will get through today. Uh, Really, my purpose here is I have certain marks on the palms of my hand that in mystic circles tells me that I'm a custodian of ancient knowledge. My destiny number relates to sharing that knowledge. So this is why I come on these platforms, because I am a custodian of ancient knowledge, but it is my role and my purpose here this time to share what I know. So that is why I'm here, and that is what I intend to do, and that's what I absolutely have a passion for doing.
Love it, love it. Right, I'm just going to go through the comments here and also some of the compliments. It's nice to get compliments. Missy, Missy I2M. Oh my God, I have chills. Absolutely amazing. Michael was a wonderful guest. I'm going to order his book now. Our hidden history is incredible. While I'm finding the next question for you or a question for you, tell us about your book, please, and hold it up if you have it.
Yeah, the book is called The Movement Illumination of the World. It's basically very scientific. It has many contributions, and the foreword, which was written by Leonardo da Vinci. So it takes science to a new level. It exposes many of the things that we have been programmed to believe, and it tells you that they're not completely accurate. Basically, we've been deceived, we've been led down the wrong path, we've been manipulated to be contained within a very narrow bandwidth of information. So it's a book really that expands minds, it advances science, and anybody who is a seeker of that word that sometimes makes me shudder with a negative connotation is truth, because truth, of course, is different to every person. But for that, anybody who is seeking to know what is outside of the ordinary perception, then it is a book for you. As I say, it has contributions from one of the greatest minds to have ever incarnated.
Love it. Beautiful. Okay, here we go. This is a big question. I mean, it's like the biggest question.
Okay.
This is from Gillian M. What I really would like to know is what or who Michael thinks God is.
Okay. There is no God other than man. So what I mean by that is man has the potential to be what we believe to be God, but God has not yet been created. We have a universal mind, a mental singularity. And this is the teachings from Hermeticism, that everything is mental, everything is a mind. Now, when I've looked into that statement, I've found correlations between what happens in the universe and what happens in the human mind. So we have a macro, micro. So God does not yet exist, and there is no other God than man. And that means that we have the potential to be what we believe God to be. And I hope that answers the question. There is no God yet until we have created God within ourselves.
Well, it's going to create a million more questions, of course, because when we say, when as you're saying that we have the potential to become God, and we are all pulling from a universal mind, which some might also argue that is God. You know, the question that for me that's never been suitably answered is who created us? I don't mean the ETs, I mean the Anunnaki. Who created them? Like, where does the original source come from? And there has to be a source that created that source that created that source. And people
Yeah,
give a flowery, explanation to what they think or what their truth is, their mental truth, as much as they can make sense in the mind of what the
okay.
world is. But yeah, go ahead.
Let me explain. So when all the viewers go to bed tonight and they close their eyes and they lose their awareness of this, on the occasions that you don't remember having a dream, it is just black. It is just silent. There's no memory. There's no nothing. That is the creator. That is the universal creator. It existed in the blackness of the dreamless sleep. And when it decided, well, there has to be more than the blackness of a dreamless sleep. What would it be like to dream? What would it be like to have all of these mental experiences through a nesting dream, a multi-layered dream, a dream within a dream, a lucid dream, a dream of life, a dream of this? What would it be like? So the moment that it had that thought, that eureka moment, that was the big bang of the physical universe. It was an idea in the mental mind of the universal consciousness, which existed in a state of zero, in a state of nothingness. So your scientific big bang of the creation of a physical universe, which is not physical, but a physical universe, was an idea. Now, when I've looked at the likes of universal black holes facilitate the nesting dream of the universal mind. Now, when you look at the micro of that, there's a region of our hippocampus called the hippocampal, which in science is called a black hole. Now, it is the hippocampal, the black hole of the brain, that facilitates our dreams. So when you have a black hole of space, it is the hippocampal of the universal mind. And that is what facilitates the dream state of the universal mind. It is dreaming what it would be like to live. That is the universe. That is God. It is the mental singularity. And that is from nothing to something, because you cannot ascend without descending. So all this talk about the fall and sin and all of these things, it is the descent in order to ascend. You have to mirror the higher by the lower. That is the universal construct. It is a nesting dream, a dream within a dream. So you have a dimensionless universe, which is a universe of light and thought, and you have a dimensional universe, which is what we believe to be a physical universe. Nothing is separate. Everything is monism. Everything, every form appears from the quantum field, in the same way that a wave forms from the ocean. The wave is not separate from the ocean, and we are not separate from the mental singularity, from the quantum field. Everything is one thing expressed in a trillion different ways, and each and every one of us is a database that is feeding back information to the mental singularity. And in the book, The Movement, that I spoke about, I put the quantum equations to support that. I do the quantum equations for the hippocampus and the hippocampal and the universal black holes, and I evidence it through mathematics and science, and advanced science, what I'm saying.
So very interesting. And again, we're here to share thoughts and, we don't have to agree on everything, and that's healthy. And, another reason why you're on is because I'm various different fields. I'm in the field of love. I'm in the field of humanity, ascending the top, human potential, really figuring out what this world is, who we are, what ETs are, etc. But there's been so much, disinformation and negativity and unsettling and energy that I'm trying to educate on this channel, a way to expand our minds and broaden our horizons and bring different people on, and even speaking at my conference who I normally wouldn't have had in the past. But because the information that's bursting to come out and ascend is trying to be covered up, we've got to go up and out, move up and out, and that's what I'm doing. So, having you on again here and right now is so great because it's going to elicit a lot of thoughts that people may not necessarily have had for a while, if at all, because a lot of the work you're covering now, this has been over 10 years in your mind, and certainly some of the things in others. We had that last round of the spiritual kind of bursting 2008, 7, 8, 9, 10. That was another push, wasn't it, on the kind of evolution of spirituality. You mentioned black holes. My friend, Dr. Mangia Samantha Lawson, I've had her on the channel a few times. She has a beautiful hypothesis and really has worked hard to develop a thinking around what a black hole is. And she espouses that it is a point of creation. We've been told to think that it's an implosion, that a black hole turns in on itself. In actual fact, she has created awareness in the field that it is a point of creation, which actually matches what you just said earlier,
Yes.
which is absolutely lovely.
Hmm.
If you've more to say on that, great. If not, I will go
Well,
next.
when we dream, it is a creation because it is our soul seeing the different facets of reality that we wouldn't see because our awareness is here when we're awake. So a black hole is a point of creation. It is a facilitator of the dream. It is the facilitator of the idea. It is the facilitator of all of these different alternative realities. And even science now is saying that dreams be an alternative reality because we spend so much time in a sleep state. We spend 20 odd years of our life dreaming in a sleep state. So it has to be an alternative reality. So a black hole is a point of creation because that point of creation is the dream of life, the dream of existence. So all of these things, science will eventually catch up with what the ancient mystics knew thousands of years ago. So yes, it is wonderful, and we do have different views. Within this dream of life, it was created that there would be multiple different opinions, because we as humans, we as people, we listen to all of these different opinions before we kind of decide upon what we want to go with, what we want to run with. But that's what the universal mind is also doing, and the only way it can do that is by creating all of these alternative views in order for them to have all of this information coming, because we don't often learn things from people we agree with, because all we're doing is just agreeing. When you disagree with somebody, that expands both of you, because you're then debating, and that's what the universal mind is doing. In terms of the phenomenon of what are ETs, well, ETs are different fragments in a different timeline, but they're us. Essentially, they are fragments of ourselves. But what you have, everything has this central point, and everything must return to that central point. Now, you can only return to that central point if all of your fragments are at a vibrational compatibility with that central point. We are lagging behind as a species, as a race, and fragments of ourself, which we have quantified as being from different star systems, which they are, but they are fragments of ourself coming back saying, you need to remember who you are. You need to remember that we need to do this together. We need to go back to that central point. And everything does have a central point. If you look at the solar system, it has a central point. If you look at the Nazca lines that are worked out to be a star map, it is a star map to the center of the universe, the center of the galaxy, which is a central point. So even the Nazca lines, the ancients have given us a star map back to a central point. So we are all going back to that central point. So if you imagine, again, just giving it as an analogy, you have that. And then you have that idea, that big bang, that epiphany, that thought. And it, like a firework. Now, all of these little embers of that fire, of that central fire, are in different places. But eventually, all of those embers will go back to that central fire. And that is what is happening. It moves out to come back in. It descends in order to ascend. It's that flux, that flow and that flux motion. And that is what is happening. So we are here to relay back our individual expression, our individual experience, until all possibilities have been exhausted. Now, when all possibilities have exhausted, this universal mind can go back to its dream state, its nothingness, complete.
Mm.
And that is why science says, for some unknown reason, in 6 billion years' time, the physical universe will no longer exist. Why? Because it will no longer need to exist, because everything will have been exhausted, and the mental singularity will now go back to the blackness of nothingness. But it will be expanded, it will be whole, it will understand what it is, it will understand itself. You have an observer and you have the observed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we are the observed, and that is the observer.
Mm-hmm. So again, great subjects to kind of, dance into here. That I believe the chakra system, that it is something that is very, very real. I am aware of it myself. I have viewed it in people physically myself. It is, to me, these energy centers. I believe that these energy centers anchor in the soul. I believe the soul resides in the heart, again, from experience. So I also believe that the chakras have, they are also creation points. We expel energy, frequency, feeling, emotion on certain bandwidths within the body, and I believe they are an emission point of creation. Also, with the oh gosh, there's so many notes here and so many things. Ah, the observer. I'm glad you mentioned the observer. I'm going to give my little hypothesis here of things I've observed, been taught by Dr. Chris Lamont, wonderful mentor of mine for many years. I must get him back on the channel. Looking at, so without an observer, without me looking at you, there is no you. You don't exist. We've already had a predestined meeting point today, for example, but better than that, there's so many experiments. I love noetic science, noetic, noetic science, again from the Greek word spirit, soul, etc. The study noetic science, they have so many beautiful experiments that they roll out, that they've done. It's got a bit cloudy lately, I feel, because a lot more people are kind of getting invested in that, and then you get that happening, and then it starts to lose its original kind of point of beauty, in my opinion. I think Dean Radin is still the president of that, but I encourage people to go look. I came to the attention of noetic science, I believe, in the book The Lost Symbol, or The Last Symbol, the Dan, oh my God, what's his name? The Da Vinci Code, Dan
Brown.
Dan Brown. That book, I thought to myself, if they ever have the guts to make that book into a movie, and they honestly cover the content in that book, it's going to be mind-blowing and mind-expanding for people, because they cover noetic science in there too, and weighing the man just before he died and weighing him seconds after he died. And of course, he was less weight within seconds, because energy frequency has a physical weight. It takes up space. So anyway, back to you on the whatever you want to pick up from there, the observer. So I know you've got a lot more to say about that.
Yeah, absolutely. We most people are stuck in what is known as an observer loop, and that is basically a recycling repetition. Now, often there will be certain, should we say, quantum field encouragements to make you aware that you are stuck in an observer loop. We call that deja vu. So when we see deja vu, it is the quantum field saying you are stuck in an observer loop. You are doing the same thing. You are collapsing all possibilities into one, which is that you are going to have the same day that you've always had, because all you're doing is repeating the same thing. So you have wake up in the morning, check WhatsApp, check the text message, check the phone. You do the same routine, and our complete life has been manipulated to keep us in that observer loop. In order to step out of that loop, you need to change what is being observed. And that is, you need to change the cycle. You need to change what you do. Now, the 7 chakras, of course, there are more than 7 chakras, but we tend to concentrate on the main 7. The number 7 is a non-human consciousness. The number 7 is encrypted deeply into the mathematics of the Great Pyramid. Why? Because the number 7 relates to a planetary mission. And that planetary mission is to awaken humanity. Now, when you look at masonry, for argument's sake, you have the letter G inside the square and the compass. The letter G relates to the number 7. So it talks about a non-human consciousness, a planetary mission. So we have all of these mathematical, scientific things that are there to remind us, because we know all of these things anyway, but we forgot what we know. So we have all of these little breadcrumbs that we leave, and sometimes other aspects of ourself are coming through to remind us of those breadcrumbs that have been left. Those are your extraterrestrials. They are saying, hold on, we've tried now, we've given you this deja vu experience several times this week. When are you going to realize that we're trying to say something? We're trying to say that you are stuck in the loop. So we have all of these little breadcrumbs that we leave for ourselves often, or different aspects, different fragments of ourselves will leave for us. Because, as I mentioned last time, there's different fragments of our own awareness that occupy different timelines, different dimensions. But we only have awareness of one of them. And if we shift our awareness to another aspect of ourselves, then we are in a different timeline, we are in a different dimension. So there's all of these little reminders and these little clues. So the number 7 is an important number. And yes, the chakras, again, enable us to grow. It's almost like a ladder. If people are stuck in the material lust, etc., they will be in the vibration of the root chakra. If they begin to ascend from that vibration, then in the next chakra, then the next, then the next. Now, mystically, there is an expression for that. When you go from one chakra to the next, it is called killing your brother. Now, that is the story of Cain and Abel, biblically. It talks about the elevation through the chakras. So, again, the Bible, as I said last time, is a book for initiates. It is a manuscript to help initiates. And that is who understand it, because it is written in a way for them to understand. But these mystic books are also written in such a way that they repel the unprepared and the unready. So if you are not prepared and you're not ready to extract the truth, you will see it as a historical story or historical event, which it never was. So we have all of these clues that relate around certain numbers. Your birthday is a universal code. All of these things are here to help us to remember what we are.
Love it. Again, a very big subject we could dive madly and crazily into and just go voyaging together, sharing ideas and beliefs and, not necessarily the same, but all good stuff. And again, inviting the audience to really, take certain things apart for themselves. You mentioned that the 7 chakras within the body, those recently in a Christian faith are doing their damnedest to crush any talk of chakras and just blame it on the Indians or the Bhagavad Gita or some mystic Eastern nonsense, which of course the mystics, the Eastern information was a lot more established before a lot of the Western jargon that we've had to, be taught as this is truth. You mentioned the God and the compass, the Freemasonic symbol, and you get the 7. Why is the G the 7? Because it's the 7th number in the alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, which takes us into numerology, the ancient science of numbers, and people figuring out, adding up their birthday in one long date, including the 19 part. People sometimes get it wrong. You got to go, let's say 9th of February, 1977. You have to add it all up in a line. And then you want to keep doubling or coming down. If it adds up to 317, you'd add 7 and 3 and 1. And if it's still double figures, you want to get down to one singular, unless you're 11, 22, 33, 44, as we know. Just curious, what is your numerology birth path number? Do you know it?
Yes, it is 4.
Ah, so balance. And yeah, you're supposed to be good with money.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've got 4 for one and I've got 3 for another. The 3 part is to share what you know, which is what I think. Yeah, communication and sharing the knowledge that you know. So that really comes into me doing these things. When you talk about the chakras are written in the Bible. When John, I think it was John, writes to the 7 churches, that's referring to the 7 chakras. So, even within the Bible, they're talking about the chakra. So it's not this Eastern mysticism.
Yeah, people miss it, don't they? They miss
it because it was written to repel the unready.
Right.
And if you are unready, you will believe that it is some kind of historical event that really happened. It didn't. It is a manuscript for those on the path of initiation, and they are able to understand it because they are taught to read it correctly. So yeah, there's all of this numerology, because mathematics, of course, is kind of a universal language, and mathematics then goes into vibration, it goes into geometry, it goes into the force of the universal mind, it goes into a lot of different disciplines in terms of that geometry. We look at geometry, which the Greeks call frozen music, because sound is universal creation. But because it's always moving, it's difficult to actually analyze and research and look into what's moving. So when we are fortunate enough for something to become static, like geometry, we are then able to look at the mysteries of nature and the mysteries of the universe through geometric shapes, which are universal creation itself.
That's beautiful. I love that frozen. My friend George Lewis, he talks of that too, the frozen music, because everything sound can slow down in a dimension and become solid or solidify. It's so beautiful. Gosh, there's so many things to ask you. Let me move to a question here from somebody. Again, you and I can have our different opinions and it's all good. But that's what we get to do on the journey, the individual journey. This person, hang on a second. Let me put me bins on. 1.99 off Amazon. Let me see. Emmanuel Maggio 4408. What does it mean that what we see is not the real moon? I'd like you to explain this theory better. I'm very interested. Thanks.
Okay. Again, using mainstream science. Mainstream science has said that the moon is an anomaly. It shouldn't be there. It's too big. It shouldn't be there. That's because it's not Earth's satellite. It was created, it was made to look like a satellite, but it is really a way station. It is an observation post. It has an advanced soul pool that the likes of Leonardo da Vinci is a part of. So that is the moon. It is an observation post that uses the sun's energy as an electricity grid. I have found the true moon, the true Earth satellite, which is 1,250 miles north of where Earth is. And that is called Lilith. And the reason it's called Lilith is because Lilith means of the darkness. Now, the reason that that name is associated with Earth's true moon is because Earth's true moon is now non-luminous. So it's of the darkness, we can't see it. So the moon that we see is not the moon. It is an artificial station. So when people say to me, do you believe that we landed on the moon? I say, no, because that's not the moon. So that is what I mean by it is not the moon. It is an artificial construct to look like, but it is actually a way station. It is an observation post. Again, going back to the observed and the observer, we are being observed. There is a soul, advanced soul pool there that Leonardo says in the foreword of my book, we await enlightened souls. Enlightened souls are able to access that advanced soul pool, which is the closest body to Earth. The ones who are not enlightened, who are still primitive, who are still violent, will be rejected. Here we have all of these folklores and myths that then come into play about lunatics and the moon and different things, because volatile, violent, primitive souls will be rejected. And that's what I mean by the moon that we think is the moon is not the moon. It is an observation post.
It's beautiful. Now we have quite a busy question here from Shivani 41. I won't read the whole thing. I'll just go straight to the question. So what Michael said about the archetypal representation of the responsibilities for individually expanding inner and thus outer consciousness regarding the story of life of Jesus is something I'd like to hear him speak of in more detail. To me, whatever is inner and or outer is a mirror of its own totality. Please, it'd be helpful to be able to better understand what perhaps I've misunderstood that Michael has said. Is he saying that no such life as Jesus occurred, and that it has been a kind of deeply volitional metaphysical mythology, or what? I'd love to hear more. Interestingly, Jesus is remembered as having been a visitor in India and was called Isha there. Stories of this India visit have been offered both orally and in written forms for centuries. Is there anything real about reality, or is it all subjective?
Okay, Pope Leo X. It has served as well, this myth of Christ. Okay, what we have is the Roman Council of Nicaea that gave this character Christ his divinity. So Christ, so-called Christ's divinity, was given to him by the Church of Rome, not by God. So we have this man-made construct. Going back, what I said about the Bible is a manuscript for initiates. So when you read the Bible as an initiate, when you read the Bible in a meditative state, you read it because you extract hidden information. The name Jesus Christ is an instruction. It is not a name. So the word Jesus means divine breath, okay, which is spirit. The word Christ means seed. It relates to the seed of knowledge. Now, when you do conscious breathing, conscious breath techniques, you take that solar seed from the solar plexus and it rises through the body. So Jesus Christ is an instruction, not a name. So the character Jesus, as in the Son of God that came down here to save humanity, is not true. When you start talking about crucifixion on the cross, you are talking about crucifying the ego. You are talking about many different facets of your own resurrection, your own ascension. There are multiple initiation techniques that mirror exactly the story of Christ, the death of Christ in the tomb for 3 days, the resurrection of Christ. All of these things are parts of initiation ritual. Jesus Christ is not a person. Jesus Christ is a metaphor for what we can be. Because if you want an example of what the perfect spiritual man would look like, you have to have an example in order to attain what that is. And Jesus Christ is a metaphorical, but also a man-made example of what the perfect spiritual man is. So when you look at all the biblical stories, when you look at all the biblical characters, they are metaphorical. You know, there's been Israeli archaeologists that have said, in 70 years of excavation, we have not found one single piece of evidence of the biblical Exodus. Why? Because it didn't happen. It happened inside. And let me tell you, the word Moses means initiate. When you look at the Sinai desert, Sinai means teeth. It is the articulation of truth. We have Moses that separates himself from the crowd in the same way that the initiate separates himself from the population in order to receive these mystical communications. You have Egypt, which in the chakra system is known as captivity. So you have the Israelites who are captive in Egypt in the root chakra, and they are making their way, their exodus, the way out through the different chakras. Now, in mystical terms, this is known as the path of least resistance. It has an alternative name, the open sea. So we now have the Israelites passing through the open sea, the path of least resistance from root to crown, from captivity to the promised land. That is the story of Moses and the Exodus. It is the elevation through your chakras by the initiate, Moses. We can look at all of the different Bible, the famous biblical characters, and they can be paralleled to initiation. And that is what the Bible is. It is a manuscript for initiates. It is not historical fact. There is no evidence whatsoever. The Roman Church backdated and put all of these different so-called characters together at one point in history. And they made believe that these 4 Gospels were witness to what Christ said or did, but they didn't. They weren't. So what the Bible is doing, or what the Church of Rome is doing, is writing what Jesus, had he existed, what he would have said, not what he did say. When I was in a previous career in the police force, I was in a court Crown Court, Magistrate Court, all different courts throughout the land regularly. And literally every time I stood in the witness box, one of the first questions that I was always asked, without fail, is, when did you write your evidential notes? And if I said within 20, 30 minutes of the incident, because then the incident was fresh in my mind, my evidence was accepted. If I had said, Your Honour, my evidential notes were written hundreds of years after the event, do you really think that that would be accepted as good evidence? And yet, we are expected to believe these witnesses who are 100 years out of date are credible witnesses when they weren't even there. Now, what we have is we have this manipulation system of mind control, and we have this mind control that keeps people in a static vibration that they will never evolve from. And if you can keep people in that observation loop, you will keep them. And again, I don't wish to be demeaning. I respect the bravery of military people. But when we're having these remembrance days at the same day every year, they're keeping us in this observation loop. And they're keeping us within this narrow vibrational bandwidth. And the church and the Bible and all of these mainstream religious books are basically renting and controlling the minds of the population. And if the population ever wish to evolve, they need to get out of old patterns.
Very interesting. And again, a lot there to unpack, because the way that you're expressing your beliefs is going to help others that don't follow a mainstream thinking, and allow them again to expand into other areas. And we want to encourage that. Now, there are universally what we call archetypes. There are the angelic realm, the demonics, different ways of people's character. I have physically had a connection, I believe, very strongly with Archangel Michael, with Jesus or Yeshua, with demonics, unfortunately, and others. And I remember one time seeing John the Baptist and Paul, and waking up, and they were standing, leaning over, and I didn't even know there was a disciple called Paul. I knew there was John the Baptist, of course. And I remember going to look to see, because it was a telepathic communication, two men surrounded by light, beautiful. It's so incredible when you have a spiritual experience like that, that you know who it is, you know straight away who it is. And so I'm like, bloody hell, there is a Paul. There bloody is a bloody disciple called bloody Paul. I didn't even bloody well know. And I was amazed. And so for me, that's like a breadcrumbing on the journey of life, dancing in between what we, the initiate, the seeker, is going to find, discover, and then run through our computation system and figure out, does this work for me? Is this real? So, again, I always talk about my experiences as being mostly physical. This is how I can, stand hard on the ground of that. But it's just so interesting, again, to invite the different thinkings.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at all of these beings that do exist, okay, they never name themselves, we name them. Because it is this human mental condition that we have to have some kind of identity. So St. Michael is an anagram of alchemist. Okay, that's why Michael is associated with the sun, because it is the gold of enlightenment, it's the gold of alchemy. So St. Michael, spelled S-T, Michael, is an alchemist. That's why you have the tour of Glastonbury, St. Michael's Tower. It is the alchemist's tower. And I did a presentation on that the other day and went deep into that. What happens is when we are visiting these other places and things appear to us, because the mind has to have some kind of identity, some kind of association, we identify that being with something that we know. So we say, well, that must be the Archangel Michael because I know Archangel Michael. That must be Gabriel because I know Gabriel. That must be Paul. That must be this, that must be that. So the mind puts some kind of chronological order to explain to itself what it is seen. So we are the ones that give these beings names. They are vibration. What are angels? They are conscious electricity. That is why they have L at the end of their name. So what you have is angles of light, angles of electricity, or arcs of electricity. So they become archangels. So you have God and his angels, God and his angels. And we're the ones that are put in this mental construct as to what we expect these things to be. So when if somebody is of Islamic faith, if they have an out-of-body experience or they come across one of these beings, they will say it's Muhammad or it's Allah or it's Fatima or it's a character that they associate because that's what's in their psyche. So we are the ones that put names and identities to these phenomena.
Brilliant. 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 Okay. We're going to go to another question now. TY Jordan 3534. It's 144 megahertz, 144,000 hertz, speed of light harmonic. It's the resonant frequency of the sacred qubit. So would you agree with that, bearing on last week's conversation, the 144?
Yeah.
Which we,
144 is the harmonic of 144,000. Now, I found the 144 code in most significant historical things that I've looked at, whether it be the Sphinx, the Great Pyramid, the birth date of John the Baptist, Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man, and so on and so on. It is this 144 code that, again, biblically, is the 144,000 with Christ. It is those who have attained the higher octave of man. So, yes.
Brilliant. Right, I was going to put on the next question. See if you can turn up your audio is a little bit
let me get closer. I'll get closer because I've got a.
Sure, it's turned up maximum because I've just the whole way through we're getting a little bit of interference. Okay. This is the kind of question I love, Michael, right?
Okay, sounds interesting.
Darren O'Hare, she says, I've written pages of notes. Can't believe how much knowledge this man has. As to questions, more on the Last Supper or more on Leonardo da Vinci, Nikola Tesla. Anything he talks about is good. Thanks, Dani and Michael.
Okay. Well, where do you start with that? Leonardo spent 3 days with me teaching me about the Last Supper. So if you can imagine 3 days, there's a lot encrypted in one fresco. So let's start with Nikola Tesla. There are certain people through history that have been sent to advance humanity. Again, it goes back to what I was saying last time about Hermes Trismegistus, thrice great. So you have creation, you have ascension, then you have the return. The return part is coming back having ascended to help others to take the same route. So that is the return. So there are certain characters within our history that we can say that person was different, that person was there for a specific reason. Nikola Tesla was one of them. Nikola Tesla was priming me throughout my life until I was ready for Leonardo to step in. Now, Tesla himself has said and publicly documented that a lot of the time in his dream state, he was given lots of quantum equations. I've also said that that's exactly what happens to me. And I take a notebook to bed and I have to write them down. Now, the person, or should we say the being that was giving Nikola Tesla those quantum equations is Leonardo da Vinci. Now, I watched a documentary on one of the channels many months ago, and George Norrie from Coast to Coast was on there, and it was a documentary about Nikola Tesla. And George Norrie made a comment saying, Nikola Tesla had a mind like Da Vinci. And I'm sitting there thinking, little do you know, because it was Da Vinci that was giving him these quantum equations that he was using to then formulate his free energy and different things. So Nikola Tesla was sent here to specifically assist humanity through the science. And it was Leonardo da Vinci that was working with him in order to do that. Now, the last person that Leonardo worked with before me in terms of science was Nikola Tesla. So there's been this historical gap between Tesla and me, but we both have the same information coming from the same person. So Nikola Tesla was just one of many people who came here to assist humanity, and of course we know how he was treated. So that is Nikola Tesla. Leonardo da Vinci. Again, he is a hybrid genius that came only once And I mentioned last time when you said that there's lots of people claiming to be reincarnations of Leonardo da Vinci. They're not. Leonardo came once in medieval times, and he was absolutely horrified by the way in which humanity treated itself. So when you start looking at the eyes of the majority of his paintings, you see that there's a sadness in the eyes. What is the sadness in the eyes? The sadness of his observations of humanity. Because he's really, really sad in the way we kill each other. We don't help each other. The way in which humanity has always treated each other. And that is the sadness around the eyes of the characters of his paintings. The majority of them was me in a former incarnation. So he came here once to help humanity. And he now helps humanity from the other side, so to speak, through Nikola Tesla. And now, fortunately for me, through me. And a lot of all of the things that I'm getting, a lot of the things that I'm being taught are coming direct from him. Now, in terms of the Last Supper, we have a commissioned painting by the church authorities. Now, the church, I mean, the Vatican rules the world now, but in medieval times, it really was open control. And if you stood up against the church, if you said anything that wasn't authorized by them, it was a death sentence as a heretic. So he told me that he did a lot of commissions. He was kind of forced to do. And he was given certain criteria. And what he did was created what looked openly to be biblical scripture, authorized biblical scripture. The Last Supper being an authorized biblical story. Christ had this meal with his apostles, and the next day he was crucified. So this was accepted scripture. So he painted, certainly in a deceptive way, what would look to be authorized scripture of the day, to preserve his own life. But behind that authorized scripture, it has a completely different meaning. And when you start looking at the hand symbols of the characters, when you start looking at the Hermetic teachings, you will see that it is actually an Hermetic debate. It is not Christ. It is not the disciples. It means something completely different. Now, these Hermetic debates always took place within an Egyptian setting. Now, the Last Supper is set within the King's Chamber. Now, the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid is an Hermetic seal. Now, the word hermetic means an airtight container, and that is symbolized by the likes of Venus and the shell and things, but it is an airtight container. And the reason that it is an airtight container is it keeps out the toxins of the world. So these advanced souls can debate certain things without the toxins of the outside world. And that is what you see in the Last Supper. It is an hermetic debate in an Egyptian setting. That's what the Last Supper is. And again, I could go on for a long, long time in terms of analysing every singular leg position, every single hand position, who the disciples really are, who the Christ character really is. But it took Leonardo 3 years while he was in Milan to paint the Last Supper. But he passed it off to the church authorities as being a legitimate, authorised biblical scripture, when in reality, it is nothing of the kind.
So interesting. Now, you mentioned the Last Supper painted by Da Vinci, and I'm sure most people universally know it's on bloody Christmas cards and everything. It's a long table with Jesus in the middle, and they say Mary Magdalene off to the left of him, I think, and there's hand symbols and the symbol of the womb, and for us English, I know for us British, it's a couple of those, which is really, really bad. It's as bad as this in America, but people think, yeah, man, we've always made fun of the Americans and Canadians, haven't we?
Yeah,
You've got no idea. This means F off, okay? In Britain, it does. So we always, bless them, tease the Americans and the Canadians. I've lived in both of those countries. So I love me Americans and I love me Canadians and everybody else in between. the King's Chamber, you said that the Last Supper painted by Da Vinci, that particular one, was painted inside the King's Chamber. I've never heard that before. How do you know that? Well, Da Vinci told you.
Well,
I'm guessing.
you know, if you want to know the true intention behind the artist, then you speak to the artist. You know, what you have again, the King's Chamber is an hermetic seal. It is acoustically contained. So you have the likes of F sharp in the King's Chamber, which is really a very specific, important frequency because it controls reality. Now, I've actually come up with a musical code that is the control of reality. So the likes of the King's Chamber it falls in with Hermetic principles that it has to be within an Egyptian setting, because Hermetic teachings is Egyptian Gnosticism. So it always is within an Egyptian setting. So the King's Chamber is the setting for this Hermetic debate, and that it is the King's Chamber. And he basically showed me the wall which the fresco is on in Milan, and he's talking about techniques called projective space, and that is how he kind of got the angles on the wall, but it was based upon the King's Chamber.
Uh-huh. You know, thousands and thousands of years of history, physical history, and it concerns me that people think it's such a great thing to get into the Stonehenge circle or the sealed King's Chamber. They're not using their minds and thinking about what has been done inside the coffin, the sarcophagus. We know, you and I know it's not a bloody coffin, but people have been, oh no, it's a coffin. That's where they buried the king. Yeah, no. But anyway, the black magic, the spelling, the satanic rituals, the this, the that have happened in that box, in that. I mean, I want people to be a bit more careful and not so carried away with the tourist traps, of it, and really look at who are you going to Egypt with. Don't just go with any bloody body, especially those hypnotherapists. You got to watch out for those bints. Earlier, you mentioned, we can go back a step, but creation, ascension, return. And basically, creation, ascension, return is an anagram for arc, just interestingly enough. And we are also electrical circuits. There's no question we are electrical circuits.
Yes, we are archangels, angles of arc.
There you go. So we're all angels and we're all gorgeous.
We're angels. The Holy Ghost is our own intuition, our own guardian angel. We are the angles of arc. We are electrical arcs.
Yeah, so beautiful. The 3D thinking, what keeps everything physical and what the controllers of the simulation that we live in, let's say, they've tried to keep us all the way down in this rigid, contained, or suffocating box of nonsense. And of course, we are arcing up and arcing out and creating our own kind of thoughts and magical. And many of us trying to raise frequency, higher and higher and higher and higher in many ways to connect together that Christ consciousness energetic frequency that we're all allowed to have. And I can't believe the violence I see in the radical Islamic, where you say one thing against the Prophet Muhammad or Allah or this or that, they picked a Christian icon. They picked Archangel Gabriel when the Prophet Muhammad went up the mountain and came down having written their holy book. And he said that the Archangel Gabriel, they call him Gibral, or they pronounce it differently in different ways. I've heard 3 or 4 different tones on that name. So that's interesting, mate. Moses went up, came down after seeing a few angels. And it's all great, again, archetypes. But my God, if you say a word, the violence, the murderous violence to shut us down. And that I see that in Islam. I see that in Christianity. I mean, I see it pretty much across the board. I don't think I've ever met a violent Buddhist, though. I don't think I have. Don't think I have, but I've seen so many impassioned people who absolutely will die on the sword of what they've been trained and programmed to believe, and they've taken that honest truth. And if you dare say one word,
if they had an ounce of logic, they would think I would fall on the sword and die for this. And yet the person that's told me to jump on the sword never jumps on the sword. What do they know that I don't? But that's the human condition. It doesn't think. And, you know, when you start killing people because you're having an argument over who is the most loving God, when you look at the Bible as is presented to us, the God of the Bible is a genocidal murderer. Now we are told that this is a God of love, who loves humanity, who loves Earth, and yet throughout the Bible, he's killed everyone. How is that a God of love? So that's not the God of love. What is it? You know, it's like when I get messages from Christians who says that I'm going to burn in hell for eternity for what I've said.
God.
And all I say is that the love of Christ coming out of you? Straight away, it's like, because I don't know where to go from that statement. You know, you're saying that you are this religion of love. You are part of this Christ cult where Christ loved humanity so much that he sacrificed himself for humanity, and yet he's going to murder me and eternally damnate me in hell so I can burn forever because I choose not to see it the same way that you do. Just analyze, who exactly are you worshipping here? Because all of these things were never meant to be worshipped. They were meant to be used as a tool.
Mm-hmm.
You're not to worship God, you are to become God. And it goes back to that question from the beginning. There is no man, there's no God other than man, because we are all gods in waiting. And because we have experienced both the spiritual and the physical, we have become more powerful than the gods. So they are not to be worshipped, they are to be used, to be emulated, to be used as a frequency to advance ourselves. And because humanity is so stuck in the program, it will kill each other over whose God is the most loving. Now that to me, from my different viewpoint, is little more than pathetic.
That's a rather nicely chosen word, Michael.
Yes, I quite like it.
Indeed, indeed.
People have called me all kinds of things. You know, they said that I deny the existence of Christ. I don't. I say it is something else. You know, people have called me a blasphemer, and I say thank you, because I know what blasphemer means. You know, when you look at the likes of Allah, what does Allah mean? Allah means oak tree.
Poetry.
Allah means oak tree.
Alchemy. So it's bloody audio on here.
It's the oak tree. O-A-K, the oak.
Oh, the oak tree, darling.
So that's what Allah means. So we have Elohim, which means oak tree. We have Allah, which comes from Ella, which means oak tree. We then have the likes of Druidism, which means oak knowledge. So what we have is, when you look at the ancient tree, you have the leaves and the branches that represent connection to heaven. You have the bark that represents the terrestrial realm. But you have the roots that relate to secret knowledge, because you can't see them, they're underground. So in Hebrew, the word blaspheme means to uproot. So the word blasphemer is someone that uproots what was secret and brings it into the public awareness. That is what a blasphemer really is. So when somebody calls me a blasphemer, I always say thank you, because that's what I do. Because I understand what I'm saying and they don't. The same way as when someone calls you a conspiracy theory, I just like to say, a conspiracy theorist, I just like to say, tell me when the phrase conspiracy theory was first ever used, and then tell me what it really means, none of which they can do. So it just proves that they're completely ignorant. They're just parrots, and they're just repeating what everybody else has said, because they have no understanding as to what it is. Yeah. The first time that the phrase conspiracy theory was ever used was in the year 1870, and it was used in a book called The Journal of Mental Science. That's the first time that the two words conspiracy and theory was put together. Now, anything with the word spire in it means breath, which is spirit. So spirituality is the art of breathing. So to conspire means to breathe together. Now, when we all breathe together, we are all under one universal soul. So that is what a conspiracy theory, what a conspiracist is. We are all breathing as one. Now, My opinions on the soul is that it's one universal soul that fragments into multiple expressions. So we have the gaseous substance of the universe, and then we have the individual star system that has a different chemical formula to enable so-called life to exist in that region of space. On Earth, we have oxygen. That is our spirit, but it is a fragment of the universal soul. On other star systems, you will have another chemical formula that is breathed. So this is the one universal soul that separates into different gaseous substances to sustain individual expressions of life. So we have oxygen, and that is our aspect of our soul. That is the aspect of the universal soul. And when our spirit comes into it, when we breathe in and out, that is spirit, that is breath. So we are breathing in the universal soul. So when you breathe out, you are expelling the dust of amnesia. And when you breathe in, you are drinking the geometry of the cosmos. But when we breathe in and out, which is the meaning of Yahweh, YHWH, H, to inhale and exhale. So the Hebrew God is actually breath, not God. When we breathe in and out, you give and you shall receive. You are receiving and giving the universal soul through our spirit, which is what we breathe. And if you are a conspiracist, you breathe as one.
Very interesting. You mentioned the word spire, and you said it also means spirit. So it's so fascinating when we see these, what they call Tartarian, or just amazing cathedrals, beautiful buildings. The Duomo Cathedral in Firenze, also known as Florence, for example. These poles, these strong, long, metallic, copper, whatever they're infused with, spires. And what they're doing is, this is technology that's bringing in the free energy or the frill energy, you know, expanding and it was it the expanding, and what is the two ways? Inhale and outhale, the plus expand
and retract.
Yeah, there's another beautiful I learned something about that. So another beautiful way of expressing it, it escapes me right now. So I find that amazing, that the energetic pull of this beautiful technology that allows us beings to exist here. And of course, the nefarious deadheads have tried to take all that away. The other thing I wanted to say was about the different areas, different books, different religious books, holy books, thinkings that we get our information from on my long-term seeker's journey of study, which you've clearly done. I spent a lot of time learning and reading the Upanishads, the Vedas, the Bhagavad Gita, learning all about Hinduism and their religion, and really absorbing myself in religions of the world at different times. And, you know, I found such a beauty in the Hindu gentle religion to some regard, but not the bit where the wife has to stay at home with the kids all day, because that to me is not growing or expanding. That's a bit old fashioned. But the Upanishads and the Vedas and parts of the Bhagavad Gita really piss me off, because my being doesn't respond to repression, depression, to an authoritative, you know, like, oh, you need a middleman, like in Christianity or the Catholics, let's say, or you got to go through a cardinal to get to a bishop, or the other way around, I don't care, to finally get to the Pope. And it's like, excuse me, mate, bollocks, sit down. You know, there is no one in our way. And this is such a repressive lie to billions and billions of people. So whenever I've studied a religious tone, doctrine, scroll, script, whatever, book, and absorbed it, I energetically can only remember, which is one of the great lessons of us being a human, I think, we remember how something or someone makes us feel. That's something very beautiful. Even if we can't remember the content, it's the feeling, the emotion connected to it. Yeah, so they all piss me off because they're also bloody bossy. Now, in terms of your study and the things that you know, what would you recommend to people in terms of being on their own seeker's journey? Significant information that might allow them to expand the mind and be okay with being wrong about what they were taught.
What I would say is we all start off from where we are. So you can only begin where you are at that particular time. We all usually start off following someone's channel. going to someone's conference, reading someone's book. But what you are doing is really just listening to their explanation and their opinion. Eventually, which happens with all initiates, with all the mystics, is eventually you realize you don't need books. You don't need to follow anybody. What you do eventually is you tune into the universal field, the quantum field. Because when you are tuned into the field, it is the universal library. And anything that you wish to know, you are aligned and attuned to. That comes when you are silent, when you listen, when you feel, when you ask the question and see what direct experience comes back. For me, the only truth is a direct experience, which is why I always say I will not speak about any subject that I have not personally witnessed, that I have not personally experienced, because I've been to so many. I've been a guest speaker at, let's say an example, lots and lots of UFO conferences and other conferences, but UFO conferences, which I'll use an example. I have often at the conferences that I've attended probably been the only speaker there, or one of two, who's actually experienced the subject directly. So if I had not experienced the subject directly, what authority do I have to stand on that stage? None.
Exactly.
So
right.
Yes, so I won't speak about anything that I have not personally experienced. And my answers now to the questions that I pose, I get directly from the universal library, the field, by aligning to it, by attuning to the frequency of the answer. So what people are aiming towards is being in that place of silence. Silence is not the absence of sound. Silence is the presence of awareness. And when you give yourself time to be aware, that is why there's such things as hermetic seals. That's why there's such things as monasteries. That's why there's such things as temples on the mountains of Tibet. Because you are creating that space for silence. And when you have that awareness, when you say a word, you wait for that word to grow in the silence that follows the speech. So when you are in that silence, you ask a question and you align and attune to the frequency of the answer. That is a direct answer. That is the only truth. Everybody else, it's an opinion of the truth. But you have to get to that realization. It really, really seems a perverse thing to say that I write books to teach people that they don't read books. It seems a very perverse extent. But until you come to that realization, you can only start where you are.
It's so beautiful. My friend, Dr. Chris Lamont, the mentor I mentioned earlier, he's so completely brilliant. I have learnt, I mean, some of the most metaphysical understandings have come from him many, many years ago, early. And he ordained me as a minister in California in 2004. And our learning of the Bible was to thump it. You know, it was just to go through basic kind of protocol, but get energetically free from the trauma and the fear in that book also on certain levels, because as we know, it's multi levels, as you say, for the initiate to figure out what it really all means there. And of course, some people would find that so terribly offensive.
Well, I mean, being a minister, you are a minister. The same as when you're a child, you're a youngster. You're a youngster. So there's a lot of astrological things that are coming through into the language of the world.
Yeah. But where he would take a book, Dr. Chris would take a book and he would put it under his pillow and he would just sleep with the energy of it. And oh my God, like, oh my God, the man, I mean, just really proving, really being, you know, a student of the lessons of everything. And again, that's so important. You know, here you are and I, we're sharing information. I'm obviously highlighting you and we're sharing thoughts back and forth, which is healthy, you know, and it's good to see it. It's encouraging to see it, and people want that. I'm hungry for it. Anyway, enough stories about him because I could go down the road there and we're never going to come back. I wrote down what you said. Silence is the presence of awareness. That is so beautiful. So beautiful. Silence is the presence of awareness. I love it. Got a question here from somebody. Laura Laura Shomisk. I am curious as to why Michael has the two keys on the wall behind him, and where are they from and what they represent to him.
Okay. The key. We all have various keys that we unlock through vibration. We have spiritual codes within the likes of the marrow of our bones. This is why initiates would lie in the chambers of the Great Pyramid, for example, which is why the chambers are there, and they would listen to the sonics of the temple, of the actual pyramid. They wouldn't listen with their ears, but they would listen with their body. And the vibration of the chambers, of the shafts of the pyramid, would release this knowledge from within them, the marrow of their bone. Now, this is one of the lost words of Freemasonry. So, a lot of these keys within us can only be opened from the inside. Now, this is the spiritual symbology of number 10 Downing Street in London, the Prime Minister's residence, because it has a door that can only be opened from the inside. So this is the spiritual keys that are inside us that can only be opened from us through vibration. When you look at the Vatican from the air, it is shaped like a key. So what does the key represent? As always, there's never just one answer. But the reason that I have the keys on my wall is that a key represents to conceal or to reveal, to lock or to unlock. And what I am doing is I'm unlocking what was previously hidden, what was previously locked, what was previously inaccessible. And that is what the keys behind me represent for me. That is the reason that I have there. I am unlocking what was previously hidden away. I am revealing what was concealed. And that's why I have keys on the wall.
Very good. Love it. There's a lot of compliments here. People are really enjoying you. One person here says about the conversation, this is "Peace be still," captivating, and then goes on to say, I try not to follow ghouls, because you and I spoke about spirits and ghosts last week as well. But this morning, Bill Gates, BlackRock, Nestles. Remember, it used to be called Nestles, Milky Bar. And then they went all French and fancy and called it Nestle. Okay, but as I am suggesting accessing water as being a privilege and not a universal entitlement. Let me get my hands on those genociding motherfuckers. They will not. They are poisoning everything. This will never be. They literally are seriously trying. They've already re-engineered the pipelines in California for years ago, starving Mexico, the Mexican border. I mean, it's just sickening that these monstrous ghouls have been allowed to get away with so much.
They are
have extra diapers because they're getting a beating.
They will get cosmic justice at some point, but it kind of fits into I can't remember if I said it on your show last time or somebody else's, but in 1994, Bill Gates purchased for 30, I think it was 30 odd million, Codex Leicester, which is Leonardo da Vinci's Science of Water. Why do you think he's so interested in water?
Well, he's trying to kill every single person on the freaking planet.
Because if you control human needs, you control humans. Why do you think he's so interested in Da Vinci's Science of Water? Why did he spend 30 million in 1994? Because there's something that he wanted to know. Because he wishes to control and manipulate. And if you can control and manipulate what people need to exist, air, water, food, all of them have already been manipulated. Our electromagnetics, which has already been manipulated, you control human. You control what it is to be human. You can control what appears out of the field as a human existence. That's why he has Da Vinci's Science of Water.
It's just so evil. And that the fact that that monstrous monster has been allowed to purchase millions and millions of acres of land. And, you know, one of they're trying to create massive data collection centers. They're going to use like solar panels and panels trying to cover up the countryside. They literally think that they can kill anything natural. God, creation. They literally believe that. Let me read this next question here. This is interesting too. This is from Miracle 63. I want to ask about the symbol on the chalice well, Glastonbury, I'm assuming. Do you have differing information from what is presented, as it doesn't sit right with me?
I take it we're talking about, is it the Holy Grail we're talking about, or the Vesica Piscis we're talking about?
I don't know. She's mentioning the chalice well, and the only place
Okay.
I know the chalice well is Glastonbury.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'll deal with both then in that case. So the chalice, or the chalice well in Glastonbury, relates a lot to the Vesica Piscis. The Vesica Piscis is a magical formula, and that magical formula comes from the word abra hadabra, not abracadabra, but abra hadabra, and that relates to the number 418. Now, the way in which you get 418 from the Vesica Piscis is inside the Vesica Piscis, the inner ring called the mandala, the almond. It has a unit from top to bottom of 265, from left to right of 153. So 265 and 153 is 418. So that is basically the completed work of alchemy. So the Vesica Piscis means the philosopher's stone. The philosopher's stone, which is the completion of magnum opus, also has a different expression, the Holy Grail. So the Vesica Piscis relates to the completion of alchemy, which is the Holy Grail. Now, when you start looking at blood upon white linen, when you look at the Knights Templar symbol, who are related to the Holy Grail, the white and the red cross relates to the Holy Grail. So both the red cross of the Knights Templar and the Vesica Piscis relate to the completion of the alchemical work, the Philosopher's Stone, or the Holy Grail. So that is the chalice. Now, when you start talking about the cup of blood, the cup of blood, of course, is your physical body. And the likes of the Knights Templar would do certain rituals to evoke cosmic energies. And that ritual would be to form your body into the chalice. So your body actually became a cup of blood, which then, with certain words and certain positions, it would invoke cosmic energies. So they made their body into the cup of blood, the chalice. So the Holy Grail is the Vesica Piscis, which also relates to Mary Magdalene, because Mary Magdalene has a numerical value of 153, which is the inside of the Vesica Piscis. Now, when you look at the Vesica Piscis, you can also draw the Christian fish, which is the 153 fish that Christ caught. It relates to the Vesica Piscis. Now, the Vesica Piscis itself, with its two rings, equals 720, which is the frequency of your third eye. So the Vesica Piscis is the completion of the alchemical work. It is Mary Magdalene, and it also forms the pentagram and the hexagram, 5/6. The pentagram is the little king, Christ, and the hexagram is God, because God controls the universe, all the 6 directions of the universe. So we have the pentagram and the hexagram, which is formed from the Vesica Piscis. Now, through the etymology of words, little king becomes Hosanna, which means save us. So we have Christ, the pentagram, who is the saviour, because it is the little king of geometry, which is Hosanna, which is to save us. Now, when you look at religious hymns like Hallelujah, the chorus of Hallelujah is the pentagram. The Trinity symbol of Christ is the upright pentagram. It is the little king, it is the saviour. And that is all formed from the Vesica Piscis, which is Mary Magdalene. So the chalice of Glastonbury, Glastonbury Tower, is the alchemist tower, which relates to salt, because it is an earth. It is a gift from earth, salt. Rock salt is a storage. It is ancient knowledge stored. So the alchemist tower, the Tor, the bull, which is an earth sign, is the gift of salt, which is one of the 3 alchemical matters. Salt, sulfur, mercury, the triangle, the Holy Trinity. Now, when you start looking inside the Vesica Pisces and you start looking at the Feast of Magdalene Day, the Feast of Magdalene Day is the 22nd of July. 22/7 is an abbreviation of pi.
Hi.
Pi is 180 degrees, which is a triangle. That is the Holy Trinity. So even the Holy Trinity relates to Mary Magdalene and the Vesica Pisces. So all of these things are geometric alchemical secrets. So the Tor is alchemical salt. When we look at the Bible and we look at Lot's wife turning to a pillar of salt, that is symbolic that every soul has a choice to make. Remain in the lower vibration, in the lower world, or evolve to become an agent of the divine. And that is symbolized by the pillar of salt. But that then comes back to the alchemical tower, the Tor, the bull on the hill. So, in a roundabout way, the Chalice is the Vesica Pisces, which is the Holy Grail. The cross of the Knights Templar is the Holy Grail. And that is what the Holy Grail is. You have become the completed stone. Now, the word stone in Hebrew means father and son. But the word stone, if you separate it, becomes the Holy One. And the Holy One is contained in the womb, which is represented by the oval upon which the Tor of Glastonbury stands.
The oval.
The oval. The oval is the ellipse, and the ellipse is to fall short. Now, to fall short means sin. So we are all born into the womb as sinners.
That winds me up so much. I can't even stand that anyone wrote that. What an idiot that wrote that. What a lie. We are not sinners. We need to tell people what
because they don't understand what sin means.
Sin, I know,
but
people take that literally, and they've ruined their lives, and they've ruined their children's lives. My life was ruined by that lie as a little girl till I started fighting back at age 7. Let's tell people that trying to keep up with this conversation that might not know what the Tor is and what the oval means.
Okay, well, the Tor, basically, there's a place in the UK called Glastonbury. Now, Glastonbury means light, and bury means to hide. So in alchemy, Glastonbury is hidden light. And it's hidden light because it's for the people that concede. So we have this tower in a place called Glastonbury, which is meant to be the spiritual centre where King Arthur, for instance, is meant to be buried. King Arthur is also a symbology. It's not a real person. So we have this tower on a hill in a place called Glastonbury. And from whatever direction you approach Glastonbury in, the first thing you can see in the distance is this iconic tower. And that is what the Tor is. The Tor means Taurus, which is an earth sign, which relates to salt, which relates to the salt of the earth, which is a gift from the earth. So that is what the Tor is. If you just type in Glastonbury Tor, T-O-R, it will come up as an image of what I'm talking about. It's the Alchemists' Tower, St. Michael. That's what it is.
Love it. And it's on this beautiful steep hill, like an oval shaped, as you said. Yeah. There are people that say this is the legendary Avalon. Yeah. There are people who say that there is a physical spacecraft or space ark buried beneath. I remember years ago seeing War of the Worlds when the machines are coming out, and I remember having such distaste and never ever ever wanting that to be true in my own mind. And I have tried to avoid War of the Worlds. Of course, what you avoid, what you resist persists. And now, I know absolutely without a question of a doubt in my mind that there are ancient technologies that are coming up to the surface. And in the War of the Worlds, of course, it's all these scary kind of spider-like, monstrosities. I wanted to mention that.
Let's deal with Avalon.
Yeah.
So Avalon comes from a word of Avaloc. Avaloc means the place of apples. Now, when you slice an apple widthways, it reveals the geometric shape of the pentagram. Now, if you wish to access the pentagram, the little king, the Hosanna, you bite from the apple. This becomes your Garden of Eden story. This becomes your Apple Corporation with a bite from the apple. So you are accessing the knowledge of the pentagram, the little king, the Christ consciousness. Now, King Arthur, Arthur gives us the word art and artos. Artos means bear. In mystical circles, it is talking about the bear man, which is the natural man. And the natural man struggles between spirit and matter. It is this inner friction that he fights. So when you remove the sword, Excaliburius, Excalibur, you are overcoming your own inner friction. And when you overcome your own inner friction, you then become Lancelot. Lancelot means godlike. And you do this through your Merlin, which is your own inner alchemy, your own inner wizardry. That is the story of King Arthur. And that's why it relates to the tour of Glastonbury, because it relates to the same subject.
Very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. I love the name Lancelot. I knew a man, I know a man, a beautiful man called Lance. I came back from England. Sadly, he's been taken. Mike said Lancelot. It's taken. I wanted to mention Baphomet. We see the signs that you mentioned earlier, the sign behind you. And, everything that is good and great and beautiful has also been somewhat tarnished. Not every single thing, but tarnished. And so Baphomet is the goat-headed, breasted. So we have a dual identity here. We have a masculine head with a female breasted body with two children that are chained to it. Baphomet, one of the satanic worshipful idols, let's call it that.
Okay.
They've also taken that beautiful symbol and tried to make it something dark. Thoughts?
First of all, it is not satanic. The only reason it corresponds to Satan is what Satan really is the Lord of matter. So anything that is matter, anything that is materialistic, is satanic. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to leave material behind. So that is the only reference to satanic. It is not satanic itself. Anything that is satanic is material. Okay, so that is the Lord of matter. The goat. When I spoke previously about the oak tree, okay, when you look at the word oak, it also comes from another word, which is Hague.
Hague.
Heggy. That means goat. So the goat, when you join Freemasonry, you are riding the goat. The goat must be separated from the sheep. The sheep are the ones who follow. The goat is the one who takes that individual path of the initiate and struggles up the mountain, because the initiation path is difficult. So you have to separate the goat from the sheep. So the goat, again, is nothing satanic. It is a symbol of having that strong mind willing to take that individual journey of solitude up the difficult path of the mountain. So when we look at Baphomet, what is Baphomet? It is a Knights Templar symbol. And it actually means, when you rearrange the word Baphomet, it relates to the father of the temple. What is the temple they are referring to? The hippocampus of the mind, or as the Bible puts it, Solomon's temple. Okay, so the hippocampus is the part of the brain that deals with learning and inner mystery. So Baphomet is the father, the keeper of the knowledge of the hippocampus. It has been completely bastardized by ignorant people.
Ignorant, and
it has been bastardized by the ignorance of so-called truth groups who have no truth whatsoever. So Baphomet is not a bad symbol. It is symbolic of transforming from your materialistic nature to access the temple. Now, when you start looking at images of the likes of Poseidon, you'll see that Poseidon is often shown as riding a seahorse. Why? Because the word hippocampus means seahorse. It is referring to the Solomon's temple, which contains the Ark of the Covenant, the electrical arcs of the brain. And the Solomon's temple is your hippocampus. That is your Baphomet. Now, when you start looking at the work of Plato, for instance, Plato tells you that you access Atlantis through the two pillars. Now, this is also why many Masonic lodges will have two pillars outside. The two pillars are the anterior fornix of your brain, which are there. And when you access through the two pillars, you enter Atlantis, which is your mind. Now, when you start looking at the anatomy, your 33rd vertebrae of your spine is known as Atlas. Now, the word Atlantis means the island of Atlas, which is this. Your Atlantean crystals are the crystal palace, the crystalline regions of the brain. When you reactivate your Atlantean crystals, you are reactivating the dormant parts of your brain that is known as risen from the dead. So Atlantis is a mind that is awakened. It is not a lost city, it is there. That is your Golgotha. That is your hippocampus. That is your Temple of Solomon. That is your Atlantis. And that we have to resurrect ourselves through various processes. And that is what Baphomet is really telling you.
Interesting. I've always been wound up by Plato and the hypothesis that these are the directions in this one book to find the city of Atlantis. I believe Atlantis was just hundreds of thousands of miles of beingness across the planet. I do believe it came after Lemuria. And again, you know, we've got different ideas and make things matter and things work through this vessel.
Lemuria means wisdom. And where do you get wisdom? In your mind. It's not a place. It is your anatomy. You know, when you look at all of these, the pyramids, the Stonehenges, the churches, cathedrals, the temples, it replicates your body. It is called canon proportions. So all of these temples are you. You are the temple. And the only temple that is important to you, where you have direct contact to the divine, where you don't need priests and popes, is your own temple, because you always have that connection to the divine through your own temple. And even the Bible says, you know, a statement from God, I am not in the temples built by the hands of man. So why do you go to church? Because God has said to you in your own book that he's not there, or she's not there, or it's not there. So why are you going to the temples? Because God is not there. This is the temple. The stone temples are replicating the temple that you carry around with you all day. That is your body, your canon proportion. So all of these mystical statements and mystical books are referring to human anatomy. The biblical so-called historical events are talking about atomical processes of ascension, because there is no other God than man or woman, because woman means man with a womb. So when you say man, it relates to the same species. So there is no God other than man. You are the one who will become God if you listen to these ancient teachings, if you follow these breadcrumbs that often you've left for yourself. The only temple you need to concern yourself with is the temple you carry around. And that is why, in the light of Islam, ladies wear hijabs, because hijab means partition. You are being severed, you are being cut off from your own divine connection.
Mm. Yeah, it's those poor women. I mean, I know there are some. I worked for years ago for a Jewish Orthodox family, the Reichmans. They were a royal family, basically Jewish royal family, in was it Toronto, Canada? And I worked for them when they were in Golders Green, Hampstead. Beautiful family, 4 little children. I was their governess, their nursery nurse, their nanny, and the little boy, the youngest little boy. They don't cut their hair until they're 3 years old in a Orthodox family, and I learned so much there. And then one of the things I learned was how some of these people and children that I met, how much being Jewish meant to them, and it was beautiful. It was beautiful, and with the Islam, you know, the extreme wearing the hijab, it's women birth the human race, therefore cutting them off in the black, you know, and some of the men are so possessive. Oh, it's so they don't get raped. Oh, shut up. Like, you men can't, you know, I better, I'll rape her, I will. I mean, it's just pathetic, absolutely pathetic.
It is.
Such a wind up. And to cut these beautiful women, all beautiful women, off from spirit, from connection, but having their eyes nothing but slits. You know, it's just chronic. Years ago, I dated a detective for a while, and he went into a house by a very wealthy, you know, person. And he walks into the bedroom suite, and there were three of the wives in there with the curtains on, you know, the black hijab,
Yeah.
the hijab, whatever you want to call it, different ways of expressing that name, called different things also. And he goes, it was so hot, the windows weren't open, and all three women were sitting reading a book. And it reminded me of the days when ladies had to be knitting or sewing or you know, improving their minds, but not too much, poppet, you know, not too much spaghetti up there, please. It's just so shocking that it's such a target. And now we've got people creating artificial wombs. Oh, it's been happening for a while. Again, to remove the beauty in the creation, like of the physical.
Yes, but the female is always, in a patriarchal society, the female has always been seen as a lesser. What they're doing in a more deeper way, unknowingly. When we look at certain symbols, like the symbol of Libra, which is the scales, the scales really are there to remind us of the need for inner balance. Okay? Because without balance, there is no progression. So what these systems are doing, and the ones at the heart of these systems know that, is they are creating an imbalance. Now, with this imbalance, you are basically keeping people in the dark ages. Again, going back to that lower vibration of the mind, that static belief system that never allows you to evolve. They're doing that deliberately to keep people in the dark ages so that they can always control them and keep them in this low bandwidth that we have. So the scales of Libra are a clue, a reminder that we need to attain and maintain balance. Now, it's throughout all of religions. You know, you speak to a Jehovah's Witness, which I have, and I've said, why do all the ladies have to wear skirts? And she said, it's out of respect for men. Why? Are you not equal to men? Again, we spoke about Islam, about, you know, the female being stifled, being separated from her divine connection. You know, we can look at different religions that have shown the woman as lesser, even the Church of England, and saying that, you know, up until recently, females couldn't be priests. They couldn't go up the ranks because they were female. So what they're doing is creating this system of imbalance. And if you create a system of imbalance, you are stopping evolution. That's what they're doing.
So interesting. Mentioning the kind of discordance of Glastonbury as we were just a few minutes ago. I was recently in Glastonbury with my friend Nikki Allen, who a lot of people know. She's this beautiful, rambunctious, voluptuous psychic medium, born in a family of a seventh generational, this beautiful, really high intuitive bloodline, and also sensibilities, metaphysical sensibilities. We went to, and I can't remember what it's called, but there is a place that you go in. It's a temple. It was very cave-like and very ancient temple-like. And there are a couple of water points inside. People fill their water up outside, the iron and the copper. I forget which way, the alkaline and the copper. But I'm sure people are screaming at the screen saying, oh my God, you're getting it wrong. But it's fine. You can put in the comments, guys, what you want to put. Anyway, so me and Nikki Allen went in, and you go down the stairs, and there's no camera photography anywhere because people are naked. They take all their clothes off, and they get in one or of two pools or three little pools. One is the main one in the middle. And so Nikki Allen and I went in. You got to be so careful because it's bloody slippery. So we didn't get naked. I'm not getting naked in public. I'm not that girl. Never have been, never will be. I stood in the pool with her and we held hands, and it was so beautiful. The ancientness, the medieval, the rising, the frequency was astonishing, and it was really freezing cold, bloody freezing cold water. And this is just a few weeks ago. We were there July weekend of the 27th and 28th, I think. Anyway, some people were coming in, passing through. Some were sitting in a meditation area inside this beautiful kind of cavernous temple. And some people were singing light language. So they're humming and the acoustics are beautiful. There's one bloody woman who's going from side to side trying to sing light language. Oh my God. I wanted to slap her. She broke the harmonic resonance of the entire place. And I thought, are you doing that on purpose, you old bag? Are you deliberately trying to influence the entire, you know, alchemical experience, the spiritual experience? And I really think she was, you know, and I know Glastonbury's got its nut jobs, every town does, you know, of course.
Yeah.
It was a real puncture in the frequency of something that was just so beautiful. And Nikki Allen was gone in the water forever. She was standing there, you know, connecting with her angelics and all the rest of it. And bang! It was like, you know, it's like a fart gun going off, which I highly approve of fart guns, but not in a situation like that.
Yeah, because a spiritual ego needs a stage. And there's so many people within this, the so-called spirit. Again, I don't like using words, but the word, the likes of the word spiritual makes me cringe, but I will use it. There are certain spiritual people, and there's a lot of them, who, should we say, are more ignorant than anybody else. They have this spiritual ego that says that I'm the best healer, I'm the best at this, I can clear the land. No, you can't. No, you can't. But unfortunately, this spiritual ego has to take a stage. Now, what she will do when she goes away is she will gladly tell everybody how she's changed the negative energies of the cave.
Yeah.
I'll guarantee that's probably one of the first things she does to the first people she sees. I was there, I cleansed the negative. Oh, it was so negative, and I cleansed it all. Absolute
Bollocks. Say
You
the
said,
word.
you said it, not
Your
me.
tongue. I know it was.
Unfortunately, there's too many of these people, and again, I say the same of truth groups. I say a lot of it of ufology groups. What the analogy that I give is that all of these different individual groups. Just imagine that society and reality is a hotel.
Okay.
You have all of these different individual groups that are locked into a singular room of a hotel. And they never come out of that hotel room to see what's going on because they're so encased in their belief that they feel that they've got it all sussed. Now, if the Jehovah's Witnesses come out of that room, if the ufologists come out of that room, if the New Agers come out of that room, they would all meet in the reception and realise that at the essence of all of these belief systems, there is one meaning, there is one origin, there is a comprehensive meaning of all things. But they never get to that stage because they are wrapped in this spiritual ego of I'm best. I have seen it many, many times. And again, as I've said, I won't speak about things that I've not directly experienced. And what I'm speaking of, I have directly experienced. The new age is the new cage.
Oh, yeah.
There are business people pretending to be spiritual because they've seen the business opportunity within the spiritual community. And they stick out like a black dot on white paper. If you wish to look past the fluffiness of what's being said. When people start to get real, we're not masters. We're not Reiki masters because we have a certificate that says we are. You cannot master anything until you've been initiated into the ancient mysteries. Somebody's saying that I'm going to give you a 2 days course for £160, and then I'm going to give you a certificate that says you are a Reiki master, is utter nonsense. Utter nonsense. So let's get out of this, should we say, childlike mentality, and let's get real and let's move forward. If we keep going back to the old codes, the old programming, the old system of beliefs that we've had, or some people have held on to for many thousands of years and have never moved on and never will move on because they always do the same observer loop, they will never move forward. So let's ditch that, start again, let's get mature, and let's move on together. You know, let's not try like the New Age keeps telling me, oh, we want to escape Earth to go to the fifth dimension. Let's not try and escape Earth. Let's change Earth so we don't wish to escape.
Yeah, fascinating. And I've been saying for years, there's no such thing as age. That is a psyop condition to take people down a certain road. And
Yeah.
I studied, among other things, neuro-linguistic programming. I did it for many different reasons, but to add to my toolkit as a therapist, a clinical therapist, a clinical hypnotherapist. And I was staggered. I got my qualifications and it said master. And I'm like, there's no way I'm a master. I'm brand new at it. It's the techniques to help people release energy, trauma in the body. It's beautiful, the NLP that I use and have used, and very quick. And it was, but I so agree with you. Reiki's been around a long time. I heard a story years ago that a woman, she had 2,000 attendees at her Reiki introduction talk, and they were there. And she said, right, she said the symbols, because they do a lot of symbols on people over.
Yeah.
And again, you got to know what you're doing. And this woman said, the symbols have been reversed. There are misinformed teachers who are reversing, who are creating negative experiences in people, not healing. And she said, if you cannot accept that you are going to learn from scratch with me this weekend or this week, whenever it was, she said, then if you can't undo what you've been taught, and you're going to learn from me the original blueprint of Reiki, leave. And loads of people left.
Yeah.
What an insult. Hang on, I'm a master Reiki 3 or 4. And it's and I think it's right to remove. I mean, be good with what you've learned, but always know we're always a student. We're students till the day we pass, or we pretty much the day we pass, we probably mastered a lot. That's why I'm like, yeah, time to go, time to leave the train. But it's so fascinating, and I think it's again sensible to kind of look at that.
Again, it's that spiritual ego. I mean, the word master originates as measurer of stars. So being a master is to be an astronomer, because astronomy is the original science. Ancient man would look at the stars and he would be able to prophesize the future based on the movement of the stars. So a master is a measurer of stars. So it's nothing to do with Reiki. It's this spiritual ego nonsense. Going back to the water, the salt of the ocean, the salt of the human body, is the Akashic records of sea and human, because the soul memory is stored within our salt. So the salt of the ocean is the Akashic records of the ocean, and our salt is our Akashic records, and we can access these memories. Now, talking of memory, the Hebrew word for water is mem.
Mem
Gives us memory. So this water is really accessing our ancient knowledge. So some people gravitate towards water because they are accessing that knowledge. And a lot of the majority of these ancient sites are built upon water, because water is a database.
Yeah, database.
But beware of pseudo lions.
Pseudo lions.
Pseudo lions. When you look at Egyptian pictures of lion-looking creatures that have leopard skin, it's really telling you to be wary of pseudo lions. And pseudo lions are the false prophets, the false messiahs. I am the greatest healer. I have a certificate that says so. They are the false lions. We don't need them. We don't want them. Let them go and be in their own reality of spiritual ego and leave them there and close the door. We don't want them. We don't need them. Anybody who is serious, anybody that wishes to advance into a different timeline of reality where those people don't exist, you need to work on your temple. You have to rebuild the temple. The Bible says the temple rebuilt. The Egyptian story of Osiris being chopped into pieces. That means that we have to disassemble ourselves to rebuild ourselves. And the rebuilding of the temple is your body, is your spiritualness, is the crucifixion of your ego on the cross, because the cross is your body. And again, I've worked out a musical code within the cross that relates to the Adam. Not an individual, but humanity. That's what Adam stands for. And that is a secret musical code, sonic code, within the shape of the cross. So the cross is the body, which is also the temple. Let's work on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you say you'd also worked out the musical frequency cross of the, the representation of the actual human body?
Yeah, well, of reality itself. So let me write it down. So the musical code that controls reality is this. If you can see that.
F sharp.
F sharp, A, U, M. A lot of people will see A, U, M and automatically they'll go, You don't say it like that. You say it A from the chest, U from the throat, M with an intensity. It's not it's A, U, M. And F sharp, A, U, M is the frequency that controls reality. It relates a lot to the Great Pyramid, which changes reality, but that I have found is the code that controls reality.
Fascinating. It's funny too, because on the guitar, F sharp is really tricky. It's a tricky bugger, F sharp, to play on.
Russian scientists have created portals using F sharp. So when you start looking into the likes of the sarcophagus, when you look at the acoustics of the King's Chamber, they are F sharp because they transport you to other places. It is the sound that creates portals. So it also creates our reality.
Love it. Well, Michael Feeley. I always want to speak in an Irish accent when I say, hey, Michael Feeley now. You're Irish, right? Irish heritage, right?
Ancestry, yes. Ancestry.
Love it. It's a good old Irish name, Feeley. It's been great. What a great conversation. I love that we can just dance around the universe, back, pop down to Blackpool, pop down to Glastonbury, come back, talk about the Holy Grail, upset 1,000 people. It's all right.
Great. It's a wonderful day. Wonderful day. The name Feeley means chess player.
Chess.
And there's obviously a significance in the game of chess with the checkered board, black and white duality, and the number 64 and all different things. So Feeley means chess player. And it comes from the Hereman kings of Celtic Ireland, who came from Merita Mun, known as Queen Scotia of Egypt. So my bloodline goes through Ireland back to Egypt.
Interesting. And then back to Ireland again, where she's buried.
Back to Ireland again, and then back here.
Yeah, Tutankhamun's sister, older sister, right?
That's right.
Yeah, our friend Luke Eastwood, he wrote the latest book on Scotia and did a lot of study on the legend and deep research.
Well, yeah. she's my descendant, or should I say I'm a descendant of hers.
Right.
Through Irish kings.
Right. I always joke when people say that this and that, because of course we're all bloodline in this family, Scottish Highland Henderson. Or I'll say I'm a descendant of Mr. and Mrs. Blobby. I do like me a bit of Mr. Blobby. He is funny.
Yeah, I mean, with some people, you can see resemblance with some people, can't you? But, yeah.
Definitely. Brilliant. All right, well, let's let people know how they can get hold of you, how they can buy your book, and I'll put the details underneath this video, but go ahead to have your final word.
Probably the best way to either do a Google search engine with my name and I'll come up somewhere. Or if you want to look at a lot of interviews that I've done, a lot of articles that I've written, etc., if you go to my website, it is michael-feeley.com. Then you'll be able to spend hours just reading all free material, or you can contact me through a direct connection to my email address and whatever, and we'll take it from there. But that's probably the best place to go because it leads to everywhere else.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Really enjoyed our chat. And welcome people again if they want to ask questions, if they want to leave their comments. Don't do it in the live chat, guys, because you can see it just goes so quick. Do it in the comments underneath, and Michael will read every comment, as will his little princess.
Certainly will. So keep them clean.
Yeah. Keep them clean. Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you so much, everybody. My name is Dani Henderson. I send love to you from my heart to yours, and I will see you soon. Thank you, Michael Feeley.
Thank you.